This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed Business News, Australia's best business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, our weekend show is all about the two of us each nominating what we think is the biggest business story of the week and the most remarkable business story and a sleeper story, which I'm enjoying a lot more this year. I think I've found a few good ones. I know this is only our second weekend show, but I think I found another good one this time. And then our favourite business story of the week. It is, of course, a long weekend this weekend. So next week, we will be back to normal with our Fear and Greed colleague, Adam Lang, joining us to judge. Today, though, Sean, it's just you and me. And so once again, we will keep this civil. We kept it very civil.
We did last week.
It was lovely. It was just...
Yeah. What I think is wonderful about the show this week without Adam is that I'm guessing you're going first this week. So I'm guessing your biggest story has got something to do with tax. Now, no one likes tax reform more than Adam Lang. So the fact that whoever goes first is going to go tax, that's my guess. Mm-hmm. Adam isn't here to judge us. He will be so disappointed.
Well, I'm disappointed because it would have just been a guaranteed win in the category for me.
Yeah. I actually reckon do it again the following week, and you'll probably get away with a win, and maybe the one after.
You bust out a rehash, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing is, though, Sean, this is a story that will not be isolated to this week. It will actually be one that we will be talking about for coming weeks. So I will find a way to work it into next week's show. But, I mean, this is the story that's dominated everything across the last few days, at least. It's the government's backflip on the already legislated Stage 3 tax cuts. The tax cuts, I mean, the context here is important because they came from the former coalition government, and the biggest beneficiaries were higher income earners. Those earning over $200,000 were set to save more than $9,000 as part of these tax cuts. Now, the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, has repeatedly said that these cuts were legislated, they weren't going to be changed, that it was an election promise, really, and it has been reiterated so many times. But now the backflip. And it's particularly fascinating, Sean, because in changing their mind on this, the government is creating so many more winners. And as David Crowe put it in the Nine newspapers, this broken promise creates 11.5 million winners and 1 million losers. So the numbers are pretty kind of remarkable. The changes include lowering the 19% tax rate for incomes up to $45,000 down to 16%, reinstating the 37% tax rate for those earning between $135,000 and $190,000. And after that level, the 45% rate will apply. No change to the tax-free threshold of $18,200. And overall, kind of when you look at it as a big picture kind of thing, people earning up to $150,000 are going to be better off than they would have been under the current package. It is such an interesting story, and everyone has an opinion on this in the political kind of sense because it is a broken promise. And the opposition, of course, because of that, will have a field day with it. But it's a broken promise that benefits a whole lot more people. So if the government kind of sticks to that message, you think that maybe there's a chance that they'll be able to come through this okay. But really, it is the dominant story this week.
Yeah, it is very interesting because the people who come unstuck a little bit are middle income and higher earners, but some middle income people, and they're the ones who have been hit hardest by the big hikes in interest rates. So the argument goes that because they're paying more for mortgages and big mortgages, then they actually should get the relief. And this sort of eats into that a little bit. And that middle class is often where elections are won and lost. So, yeah, it's going to be fascinating to play out. I totally agree that is the biggest story of the week. Special mention, though, to what happened in the lithium sector or what's happening in the lithium sector. This week, on the back of quarterly market updates, it came to the fore just how poorly many of the companies are doing. Australia's biggest pure play lithium miner, Pilbara Minerals, warned that the slumping price of the metal means there will be no dividend for shareholders in the December half. Sayona Mining cut its staff in Quebec. It's reviewing its business there. Core Lithium said it will cut a number of roles and suspend operations at a mine near Darwin to cope with lower prices, and lenders to Liontown Resources withdrew a $760 million loan offer on the back of tumbling lithium prices. That happened earlier in the week. Now, lithium's price fell 80% last year. That's tumbling, definitely. Of course, lithium is a metal used in electrification. It's also used for medical purposes, but there's a glut of it at the moment, just as demand weakens. Very tough time for lithium miners and for shareholders.
It's such an interesting one, isn't it, Sean? And is it the case that the long-term kind of view of the industry is that the demand will at some point pick up again because everything is heading towards electrification? And so if it just so happens that at the moment we have got this glut just as the demand is slipping slightly.
Yes, I mean, the market will work it out. So the market will work out a price for lithium that means mines are sustainable or not. And that's kind of what we're going through at the moment. There is no doubt. We had a great guest on this week from Commonwealth Bank, Vivek Dar, who said we need a lot more lithium long term. So you're going to need all this lithium. There's going to need to be new mines in that. But at the moment, we're just settling on a price where supply and demand match each other, and then off we go. But the long-term prognosis for lithium is still pretty good.
Yeah, it is an interesting story, and one I suspect we will be talking about for some time to come. Most remarkable story.
How about I go first on this one?
Yeah, I was going to say, it feels like, and Adam's not even here for us to kind of pander to and try and kind of play around here with. But so, you know what, civilised. Sean, would you like to go first?
Love to. Oh. My most remarkable story. I mean, it's been going on and on for years, but this week it really came to the fore. The rise and fall of Domino's Pizza Enterprises. Yep, Domino's, the fast food outlet. After delivering its fourth downgrade in 3 years, Domino's share price tumbled 30%. It's now about 1/4 of what it was in the middle of COVID. That was when the group was busy expanding stores and everyone was eating at home. Therefore, Domino's was benefiting. The catalyst for the massive sell-off was a trading update, which was released 3 hours after the market closed on Wednesday night. That is never a good sign when you release something 3 hours after the market has closed. Basically, earnings for the second half of last year, 2023, will be less than a year earlier, thanks to falling sales in Asia and Europe. Now, Japan, Taiwan, Malaysia and France have all been very tough markets for Domino's. Japan in particular was one that was supposed to be a shining light. That was supposed to be part of the big growth plans. Well, it ain't. Well, not at the moment anyway. The previous update at the group's AGM in November was much more upbeat. Investors basically are losing confidence in the company. That's putting pressure on Don Meij. Don Meij, very interesting character, chief executive officer for the last 21 years, including the period since it listed in 2005. Not many big ASX companies have had the same CEO for nearly 20 years. The major shareholder is rich lister Jack Cowan. Now, Don Meij has a bunch of shares as well. Jack Cowan lost hundreds of millions of dollars this week in the sell-off.
Oh,
ouch. This company's been volatile over many years, but this week's sell-off is particularly remarkable.
God, it certainly is. Ouch. Can you imagine that? Now, for my nomination this week, and I know I did this story last week, and I'm not being lazy and just copying and pasting into the new week.
Yes.
But I'm doing this story again because it is still remarkable, and it has become even more remarkable. This week, it's Donald Trump steamrolling his way to the Republican nomination for the US presidential election. This week, we saw the New Hampshire primary where he only had one opponent, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, and he won by a comfortable margin around 10% or so. But Nikki Haley, despite that, she isn't dropping out, even though there is plenty of pressure on her to do so. She says that she's going to push on. She's skipping Nevada, which is next, but then will appear on the ballot in her home state of South Carolina. That's going to be a really interesting one because she previously served as the governor of South Carolina. And if she doesn't win that, really, there's no way she can keep going, even though she says she wants to keep going through to Super Tuesday when 16 states all vote on the same day. But it feels a little bit kind of irrelevant because it's very hard to imagine any outcome except for Donald Trump being the Republican nominee because all of the momentum is behind him at the moment. And considering all the legal action against him in multiple states across the US, that in itself is pretty remarkable, Sean.
It sure is. I mean, that will be the most remarkable story of the year. There's my, guess, perhaps.
Did you just hijack my story?
No.
Claim it as the most remarkable of the year?
I'm highlighting the brilliance on week 2 that you can have the most remarkable story on week 2 for the year. Sort of,
No.
maybe not.
So this is the problem. I just went straight to going, you're trying to undermine and you're trying to hijack my story. No, you are still stuck in kind of civilized mode. And I'm sorry, I shouldn't have jumped to conclusions.
I look forward to Adam coming back because basically we both get fired up against Adam as opposed to each other. But then that sort of leaks out so we can really abuse each other. And I enjoy that.
That's good fun. Now, Sean, we'll take a very quick break and we'll come back and find a sleeper story of the week. Okay, Sean, we're looking for a sleeper story, which is a story that's not getting the attention that we feel it deserves, or more often that we think is going to become a bigger story further down the track. Shall I go first on this one?
Sure, go for it.
I sounded so kind of confident there, didn't I? It's a slightly curious sleeper story. I think it's fascinating because it's not often that enormous opportunities like this one present themselves to an entire sector, right? Now, Saudi Arabia is actively courting Australian miners and mining services companies because it is trying to kickstart an industry there worth $100 billion a year, starting from scratch. And the government there has rightly identified Australian companies as being experts in this space. Now, the reason why it's a bit of a sleeper story is that when you think Saudi Arabia, you think oil, right? But this is mineral wealth, not oil, and it is huge mineral wealth. The Saudi government has now doubled its estimate to $2.5 trillion in value. A couple of Australian companies have already announced plans to set up processing facilities there, and you'd have to think that with $2.5 trillion worth of mineral wealth in the ground, they will not be the last. And also, Sean, don't you think it's a good compliment to Australian companies that they've been identified by the Saudi government as being experienced in kind of building resource projects in a responsible way? This could just be a major, major long-term opportunity for Australian miners.
Yes, I agree. And in fact, there's another story during the week about Germany being interested in Australian renewable energy. Normally, that's kind of the tyranny of distance gets us on that sort of stuff. But there was a story in the Fin Review basically saying that Germany is looking at working with the Australian renewable sector as well. It is great that we have developed such an efficient industry and the rest of the world's taking notice.
Yeah, absolutely. What was your sleeper story this week?
Well, it's a very loud sleeper story, but I just think what's actually happening at the moment, people aren't realising. So this is the week that the big supermarkets truly realise they're going to have to change their behaviour. Earlier in the week, we had the Woolies boss, Brad Banducci, doing a mea culpa on the supermarket's decision to not sell Australia Day paraphernalia. He said it was a business decision made about 12 months ago, but he'd misread the political mood around it. Then on Thursday, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese asked the consumer watchdog to conduct a 12-month inquiry into the supermarket industry following claims of price gouging. The inquiry will look at how things like online shopping, loyalty programs, and changes in technology are impacting competition in the sector. And it will examine the difference between the price paid at the farm gate and the prices people pay at the checkout. The government will fund consumer organisation Choice to provide clear and regular information on prices across a basket of goods, which the Prime Minister says will promote transparency, enhance competition and drive value. Now, that's been a while coming. Obviously, plenty of news around that. The sleeper part is that already the supermarkets, as evidenced by Banducci's comments, are changing their tune. They don't want to be the banks. They want to keep their clean image. And so I reckon we're going to see lower prices on the shop floor, not because Choice will keep an eye on things. I think it'll happen really soon, mostly because of the moral suasion going on around the place. So the story itself isn't a sleeper, but I reckon we're going to start, like from next week, for example, we're going to start seeing lower prices.
I like that story.
I hope it's true.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think we'd all benefit from that, wouldn't we? Because it is
totally.
It is just horrific when you go shopping now, and every week it seems to cost more than it did the week before. And you're not buying anything particularly fancy or particularly kind of unusual or exotic. You're just buying the staples, and it's just expensive.
As you know, Michael, I'm in a household of 10 people. Our shopping bill, our grocery bill, wow, massive.
I shudder to think what that would be like.
Mostly it's the boys that play a lot of sport. Oh, my God, they eat a lot of food, and our grocery bill is ridiculous.
Oh God, that is just horrific. So no wonder you have picked this as your sleeper story of the week. Motivated by self-interest, but you know what, Sean? I think you're representing a whole lot of people.
The government doesn't need choice. Just ask Jackie or I. We watch our grocery prices all the time.
Just appoint Fear and Greed to be the new grocery watchdog.
I like it.
We could do that job. Favorite story of the week. What did you pick for this one?
I know I shouldn't, but I can't help it. It's Qantas's new safety video.
Right.
So that's going to be rolled out in coming weeks on domestic and international flights in 12 different languages. Goes for about 5 minutes, 59 seconds. It's very, very Qantas. And I say that as a compliment. All sorts of places are in it, outback in Western Australia, Tasmania, Sydney, Noosa in Queensland, lots of international destinations, New Zealand, California, Mexico, India, Morocco, South Korea, Rome, Paris, Finland, Lapland in Finland. It was filmed over 40 days in temperatures ranging from 36 degrees in Jaipur, India to minus 36 degrees in Lapland. There are 75 different versions of the video. It just, look, I mean, I know it's corporate PR, but it just looks good. You know, it has the people in Rome, the children arriving unexpectedly and the parents, you know, crying about it. We have Lachlan in Lapland. He said, I moved to Lapland to marry the love of my life. Oh, for God's sake, really? I just love that stuff, though. It just looks good, and Qantas does do emotion so very well. I promise from this moment, I won't be doing a corporate video PR piece or anything like that as my favourite story, but I just love the Qantas one.
It's just a very kind of niche promise to make because it's highly unlikely that any other corporate PR videos are going to come up throughout the year and potentially be in contention for the favourite story of the week. But you know how there was everyone criticising it or a number of people criticising it, saying it is more of a travel kind of tourism piece than it is a safety video. But you know what? Surely if it looks good, and it looks appealing and people actually want to watch it rather than just kind of keep reading or just scrolling on their phones or something during the video. Totally. I mean, surely that's going to be more beneficial.
I remember taking an Air New Zealand flight when at some period when they were running the safety thing was all about The Hobbit.
Yes.
And it was fantastic. I watched it on the way to New Zealand and I watched it back because it was fun. So I actually have... Now, if you have a normal, as you put it, no one's going to watch a dull safety instruction. You have something like that, well, maybe you got someone's attention.
Absolutely. I think it's smart. Anyway, Sean, favourite story for me. The question here for me is how on earth has Netflix done this? Because just a year or two ago, we were reporting on the decline in subscribers and a reduction in content being commissioned because they're trying to cut some costs and a generally kind of slightly dismal kind of outlook for the streaming giant because they were losing subscribers. Then this week, we hear the company added more than 13 million subscribers during the last quarter of 2023, the biggest ever December quarter growth for Netflix. It sent the share price surging. Revenue was higher, and of course that is mostly made up of subscriptions. But it is interesting, I think, that the group expects advertising to become a growing part of revenue. Standout performers for the last quarter were the final season of The Crown. No spoilers, please. Actually, I don't know whether you can spoil The Crown, can you? Because it's based on real life. So, goodness me, that's got to be up there as one of the less sensible things I've said. The movie The Killer as well. And I tell you what, Sean, it'll be fascinating to see if in this current quarter, the one we're in right now, an Aussie production is picked as one of the big kind of winners because I'm talking about the series Boy Swallows Universe. Have you watched it yet?
No, my kids have. And I know that Ragnar Lothbrok's in it. And if you don't know who Ragnar Lothbrok is, well, just shame on you, Michael.
Oh, well, okay, thanks. I didn't know this was a shame segment where we're shaming each other.
Do you know who Ragnar Lothbrok is?
I was trying to dodge the fact that I do not know, Sean.
So the actor who's in Boy Swallows Universe, I think, I haven't seen it, is the guy who was the lead in Vikings, the TV show, which is one of my all-time favourite series. Anyway, I digress.
I just think it's amazing, don't you? That Boy Swallows Universe is based on an Australian bestseller by Trent Dalton. Is just dominating Netflix at the moment, kind of the most watched thing here in Australia, but it's also kind of like number 1 or 2 in the US and same in the UK. And it is just brilliant to see that because it is a fantastic book. and I look forward to seeing the series.
Yeah. Sorry, I've got to jump in here. Travis Fimmel is Ragnar Lothbrok, also in Boy Swallow Universe. I've just Googled it.
Huh.
Anyway.
Look, you know what? If we were to pick a winner today, I think it would be me.
Really?
Yes. I mean, I had the tax cut story to lead. That was a guaranteed winner.
Yeah, I mean, that's, yep. The Qantas video of mine has to lose, corporate PR, so you're up 2-0 at this point. I had the sleeper story. Yours was...
Yeah, you in the supermarkets.
Yeah.
It comes down to Domino's or Donald Trump. And look, if we apply Adam's criteria, which are kind of economic
which are arbitrary.
And global significance kind of subjective bias.
You probably would have won.
I suspect I probably should have won. So you know what? Let's call it 3-1.
No judges today. I like that.
I like self-judgment. It is fun. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thanks, Michael.
Make sure you're following the podcast and join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed Business News. Have a great day.